White House science czar John P. Holdren, who wrote the eugenics classic Ecoscience, Population, Resources, Environment with Paul and Ann Ehrlich, a population control manifesto that insists that illegitimate babies either be put up for adoption or aborted, adding sterilants to public drinking water and staple foods, restricting the number of children you can have, and ultimately creating a central planetary regime to control all population, resources, and the environment.
Now, the heart of his outlook is what he calls, he says that population is the root of all human problems. In other words, people pollute. Humanity is a cancer on the face of the earth. The one big problem in the ecosystem is the role of humankind. And of course, in reality, the existing ecosystem could not survive without the constant contributions of human production. Holdren says that the optimum world population is 1 billion. Now let's pause. At the time Holdren wrote that, the world population was already 4 billion. Today, if you say the optimum population is 1 billion, it would mean that more than 5 billion would have to go. And again, these are orders of magnitude that Hitler, Stalin, and Mao never dreamed of. Only in the mind of fanatics like Holdren do we get genocide of these proportions.
Now Holdren is using the old globalist tool, order out of chaos, citing the new statistics that 40% of U.S. bee colonies have collapsed over the past year. Holdren and the Obama administration are calling for restoring 7 million acres of bee habitat in the next 5 years. Before the feds start snatching up land and forcing people off of it, while buddying up to CropLife America, the group that represents the makers of pesticides, what are those that spend every day with bees saying? InfoWars spoke with Texas-based Round Rock honey owner Conrad Buffard in his element.
I was teaching at a public high school full-time, raising a family, and starting this company and running one other company all at the same time, working all the time. And I did not have time to take my bees out to California or to, become a commercial pollinator. Well, it turns out that I got a lot of criticism from more established beekeepers because of that. Ended up showing that I was actually doing things right, because most of those guys, they've come around to doing things the way I do them, which is small numbers of hives set out on big pieces of land. Because of the drought cycle, you have to be able to put 6 to 12 hives per acre and be okay with that. And so you have to have a lot of bee sites. We have to be able to spread our stuff out, spread our bees out so that they can get proper levels of nutrition. And so colony collapse disorder, the key issue is the way that we've always done things as an industrialized food society. Our food is grown on, in fields where it's just a large monocrop. You put bees out there and they only get one single source of nutrition, one single source of pollen, and they end up starving to death. Recently, with this federal task force to help the bees, I think that they're generally, they have, I guess, good intentions, if you will. However, from what I read, they were just wanting to plant a few flowers by the side of the road and at federal housing projects and things like that. And that's not even going to be a Band-Aid. That's nothing, really. There are certain types of pesticides that are widely available in the United States that, have a sublethal effect on bees. And especially, I've heard so many times from so many farmers that GMO corn and corn pre-treated with certain pesticides, that the bees will die off in the beginning. Like if we were to set this in front of a cornfield that was just coming up, the bees, about half the hive, 3/4 of the hive would die off right away, and then the remainder would come back. But the thing is that they've lost their momentum. So the next year comes around, they die off again, they've lost their momentum again. So they're on a downward spiral. There's also new pests and new challenges for bees. Just like humans can be susceptible to certain viruses and things like that, so can bees. And new ones are being introduced. It seems, every year there's something new. New mites, new this, new that. And those also have a big impact on bees. Sometimes even the cures for those things, or what we're told are the cures for those things, can be even more deadly for the bees. I have seen underneath a scanning electron microscope perfectly square pollen grains, and that doesn't happen in nature. Well, speaking with the gentleman that was showing me that, who's very well respected, nationally and internationally respected and acclaimed scientist on pollen here in Texas, you know, he said that was GMO corn out of Kansas. And it's perfectly square. I mean, no wonder it's going to cause problems, because it can't move through the tissues as well as, say, a natural pollen could. And of course it's going to cause problems. So, you know, so that's why we put our hives out here in these natural habitats where there's no cropland within 4 miles of here. And if there is, it's the bees aren't foraging on it, and the only way we know that they're not foraging on it is because we do pollen tests with Texas A&M that tell us exactly what's in the honey. Right now, I can tell you that the general mix of our honey is persimmon. That's a big one. We also have a lot of acacia and a small amount of mesquite trees. So we're seeing mainly acacia, guajillo, those sorts of acacia, and a little bit of some other trees, but we're seeing a typical Texas profile. In other words, plants that there would be no way could be made into GMO seed, or could be made from GMO seed. They're natural plants, and if you take other honeys, especially some from the Midwest and other areas where there's a lot of commercial planting, you'll find large amounts. If you find any pollen at all, you'll find large amounts of GMO pollens.
Obama signed H.R. 993. It was a bill funding the federal government, and there was a rider in it, a Monsanto and biotech rider. The gist of the rider is a dangerous, ghoulish GMO food crop can't be stopped by a court order. That crop can still be grown, harvested, and sold in the U.S. There are many reasons given to the decline in bees, but one argument that matters most is the use of genetically modified organisms and terminator seeds, genetically produced and distributed by powerful multinational lobbies that manipulate government and agricultural policy to encompass their agenda of dominance in the agricultural industry. American conglomerates such as Monsanto, Pioneer Seeds, and others have created seeds that do not reproduce. Logic states that if the flower pollen is sterile, bees are potentially going malnourished and dying of illness due to the lack of nutrients and the interruption of the digestive capacity of what they feed on through the summer and over the winter hibernation process.
So, you know, if people want to make a change, grow their own plants from seed, grow them in soil that they've mixed themselves, that is clean, and don't use things like Roundup.
John Bound for Infowars.com.
From the water table to our soils to the atmosphere itself, our world is becoming more and more toxic each and every day. But it's not just the air outside that's toxic. Indoor air has been shown to have 2 to 5 times higher concentrations of pollutants than even outdoor air. And most Americans spend 90% of their time inside using toxic chemicals within their homes. There are more than 42 million smokers in the United States. Well over 1,000 types of mold and mildew linked to numerous conditions. And don't forget the fact that 6 million Americans live with pets they're allergic to as well. When I began to research these statistics, it was clear to me it was time to start cleansing my lungs in order to combat the toxic environment that we cannot escape, but that we can fight back against. Made with organic and wild cultivated herbs and manufactured in the USA, the new InfoWars Life Lung Cleanse is here in a convenient spray bottle that can be brought with you throughout any toxic environment. Now available exclusively at InfoWarsLife.com or by calling toll-free 888-253-3139.